All Indiana Politics is your premier source for Indiana politics, focusing on issues that matter to you.
I still want us to be the best in the Midwest.
We can't afford another lockdown.
Give the citizens of this country the relief they need.
Education in the state of Indiana remains priority number one.
In-depth, nonpartisan coverage.
We don't know exactly where the economy will be in January.
People are worried with good reason.
Exclusive interviews with Indiana's political leaders.
We have the resources here in the state of Indiana to care for those who are in need.
Expert analysis on critical legislation.
We need to reform those laws.
This recovery is going to take some time.
We've got to anticipate that there'll be a budget shortfall.
From Wish TV, this is All Indiana Politics Podcast on the All Indiana Podcast Network.
I'm Garrett Bergquist, government reporter for Wish TV and the producer of All Indiana Politics. It's the marquee political race of the year in Indiana. Governor Eric Holcomb is term limited, and the Republican, Democratic, and Libertarian parties are pulling out all the stops to claim the governor's chair. All three of the candidates on the ballot should be familiar to you. Republican Mike Braun has represented Indiana in the United States Senate for the past 6 years. Democrat Jennifer McCormick was Indiana's final elected superintendent of public instruction. Libertarian Donald Rainwater is making an encore appearance from the 2020 race. Braun is vacating his Senate seat to run for governor. He says he believes he can do more for Indiana in Indianapolis than in Washington. With us now is Republican candidate for governor Mike Braun. Thank you for joining us today.
My pleasure.
So let's begin with property taxes. Your plan would expand the deductions available to homeowners and cap the rate at which property taxes are allowed to grow. How do you ensure that this doesn't deprive local governments of the revenue they need?
So it's interesting, if local units had adjusted their rates down with the increased assessed value, it'd be kind of a moot point. Many of them didn't, though. So where they would have had a windfall over the last 3 years in property taxes, all the complaining about them going up 15 to 20%, that's where the reset needed to occur. Plus, to put a cap on it going forward. The circuit breakers were intended to do that, but that was assuming no inflation. So we're getting, now that people understand the concept, remember the details will be worked out by the legislature, but the idea that your property tax bills can grow faster than your ability to pay them or the growth of the economy is what most like in terms of preventing it in the future. And then the reset feature of it really isn't going to make much difference other than to the jurisdictions that did not do what probably should have been done, is taking the rate real down to reflect the increase in assessed value. So all in all, we came out with it because it's been the hottest topic out there over the last 2 years when people get their property tax bills, and for some elderly, younger couples threatening whether they can keep their home because they can't afford to pay their residential property tax bill.
How else would you expand the supply of affordable housing?
Affordable housing is something to where I'm going to look at entrepreneurs that are in the business of building multifamily homes. There are already some out there working on how do you bring costs down. Now that the kind of Biden-Harris inflation is starting to dissipate, it still increase things 20 to 25% depending on the sector. So we're going to be, dealing with that going forward. But in terms of increases, hopefully we won't see more of that. And then it's going to be up to home builders and finding where regulations, either state or federal, have added a lot to the cost of building a home or multifamily home residences. So two things we're not going to do is get involved with more federal government probably involved with it. In our own state, try to encourage home builders to be entrepreneurial in how they do it and make sure they're not being impeded by any of our own regulations. We know that the feds have added nearly $30,000 to the cost of a single family home just by stuff they've put on in terms of requirements over the last few years.
What's your plan for the LEAP district?
LEAP district, we're lucky we've got a place like Eli Lilly that wants to grow in our state. It's clear that just by the discussion of LEAP, that for a lot of the other businesses that want to come to our state, data centers, chip factories, battery factories use a lot of water and a lot of electricity, that it'll have to be in places where we've got water available. Electricity, when national policies have been shutting down our base load, we need to make sure that that isn't becoming a bigger issue. And when it comes to LEAP, it'll have to be for companies there that are probably not going to be real intensive on water use. We just scrapped together enough for Eli Lilly. Or when it comes to electricity, it's a gigawatt that the big users need. Eli Lilly doesn't need that. So we're going to have to match our capabilities on water and electricity, depending on where developments are, as to who can come in there and actually build their business.
How do you plan to encourage economic growth outside the major cities and outside of major districts such as LEAP?
That's going to be easy. I come from one of those corners of the state that doesn't see a lot of it, and there are 4 corners to the state, and we are going to still need to do the best of what we've done that gets in some of the needed industry. I'm really going to be interested, is it going to be more than just CapEx? Are we creating a lot of high-paying jobs? And then I'm going to really focus on the field of how do we help startups, small businesses, entrepreneurs. They just need more organic help. It's not going to take a major investment. It may change how we help them become more enabled. And you're going to get dividends from every corner of the state in between, because small businesses never get much attention. You never know when that next business, homegrown, is going to be that next big business that grows in your state.
Would you make any changes to Indiana's abortion ban, either to further tighten or loosen any of the restrictions around it?
I think the legislature dealt with that when they put the law in effect. And I think it'd be up to them. I don't know how much input they've been getting from either side. I think we were the first to do it, and that law was crafted after listening to Hoosiers, and it would be up to them to see if they're wanting to change anything.
Indiana's Medicaid system is currently short about $1 billion, and that's led to some pretty significant service cuts. So 2 questions. First, if you were elected governor, would you implement any emergency funding as soon as you took office? And then second, what's your long-term plan to fix the problem and prevent future issues like what we saw once the new budget goes into effect July 1st?
That's the blessing of having good structural cash flow. That $750 million issue was a miscalculation on how many people wanted to actually do things in their own home to take advantage of that option when it comes to Medicaid. So good cash flow can cover it. That can't be an annual issue. So my approach to healthcare is clear. I fixed it in my own company. We have to, in our own state, where we have some of the highest healthcare costs, some of the poorest outcomes, especially infant maternal mortality, we got to fix it from the bottom up. And wellness and prevention, not expensive remediation, that is the way to get it done. And I've done it in my own business. We can do that in our own state healthcare plans. I want to make it easier for businesses to be able to pool and associate to get the best insurance you can get for your employees. And then it's going to be a case of Indiana leading, whether the government is the payor through Medicare or Medicaid, or it's through the private sector. We've got to get our results better, and it's got to be based upon wellness and prevention, not expensive remediation. That means the industry itself is going to have to start doing things differently, because that is what sets us apart the wrong way from a lot of other states that do a better job at it.
You've called for universal school vouchers. Is there a risk that we're going to create a 2-class educational system when we do this? Your opponent has said that that's going to allow private schools to discriminate against kids who are trying to get in through those vouchers.
I think if we were taking resources away from the public education system, I come from a place where the public schools are great. My wife and I attended them. Our kids did. Our grandkids are. Not all places have that. So when it comes to vouchers, choice, competition. We need to be embracing it. And the argument that they make, that's just not true. It's not a zero-sum game. We've been resourcing public education in all schools with more resources each year. I've been adamant about getting more of that into teachers' pay and benefits at a level higher than what my opponent has recommended. And when you're investing currently $245,000 into a classroom annually, when you look at teacher pay, maintenance, upkeep, depreciation, there's a lot that we're putting into the classroom that probably needs to be devoted more to teachers and instruction as opposed to building, plant, and equipment and the maintenance of it.
Indiana will carry out its first execution in 15 years on December 18th. There are, or at least is scheduled to, there are 3 other men on death row who have exhausted their appeals. Would you seek execution dates for them?
I'm going to look at each particular case. I know there's one currently that's in play, and when it comes to capital punishment and how you use it, it is something that I'll look at it on a case-by-case basis.
I want to go back to your economic plan for a minute. You've said that you would incentivize employers to raise wages. How would you do that, and what to you would be an acceptable level to raise the wage? I mean, would this be raising the minimum wage?
So when it comes to employers where they're investing in upskilling, whatever they're going to do to get better value, along with an increased wage, it'd be part of economic development. It'd be when you're incentivizing them to put up a new warehouse or a factory. And generally there's going to be a payroll counterpart to it. And to me, higher wages, and that's going to have a lot to do with higher education, balancing what we do post-secondary, but most importantly, half our budget, K through 12, is $11 billion a year. We need to make sure we get it right on the proper balance between skills and trade, which account for about 2/3 of our jobs, currently about 150,000 of them that would pay most 4-year degrees, can't be filled because we've de-emphasized it. The most important degree that pays the highest wages, we underproduce. STEM degrees. I'm going to make sure it's balanced, that there's a lot of information out there for parents and kids to see the high demand, high wage jobs, cost of further education, or no need of further education.
What's one issue we haven't talked about that you believe is not getting enough attention in this governor's race?
Well, I don't think we've talked about child care. I hear that along with rural broadband. We talked about affordable housing. Child care is something that our own federal government incentivizes to kind of stay home and watch Netflix, and you had to take care of your kids then. Now when you're wanting to go back into the workforce, finding that it may not be available or it costs too much. Visited one just this past week where a family of entrepreneurs, Northern Indiana, have got a daycare center from infant to 12 years old, run in a very entrepreneurial way. It looked like they took the best practices from looking at a lot of other operations, affordably priced and already filled up, overbooked. I'm going to encourage other healthcare entrepreneurs across the state, childcare, to get out there and do that same kind of thing. That's an issue I hear a lot about.
What makes you the best choice for governor?
Well, probably the 37 years I spent in the real world running a business. A lot of governors don't sign the front side of a paycheck. My opponent, I don't know. She's been an educator, an administrator. 4 years that she was running education, we got worse rather than better. I've been part of stuff where we've improved year after year. So hard scrabble, little business, turned into a regional company and then national company. 3 years a legislator, weighed in on infrastructure, got some creative legislation passed, skin in the game for areas that don't often get attended to their infrastructure. 6 years in the U.S. Senate on health, education, labor, and pensions. The Agriculture Committee, and in the last Congress, and in this Congress most likely, the most effective freshman Senate office and in those 3 areas, the most effective Republican senator. I'm bringing that to this task. It's a record over time in business, in the real world, in our state legislature for a short stint, 6 years in the Senate, that I think her record will pale in comparison to that.
Mike Braun, thank you for joining us.
You're welcome.
That was Mike Braun, Republican candidate for governor. Early voting is underway. It continues until noon on Monday, November 4th. Election Day itself is on Tuesday, November 5th. Remember, you can catch All Indiana Politics every Sunday morning at 9:30, only on Wish TV. I'm Garrett Bergquist. Thanks for listening.
From Wish TV, this is All Indiana Politics Podcast on the All Indiana Podcast Network. Watch All Indiana Politics live Sunday mornings at 9:30 on Wish TV and at wishtv.com. Subscribe to this podcast and listen weekly here on the All Indiana Podcast Network. And be sure to discover even more great podcasts at allindianapodcastnetwork.com.